Hi, I'm Kelly Lynch, and this is US Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to US Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. Show your support by visiting US Modernist's massive mid-century modern archives at usmodernist.org. Or if you're hoarding old architecture magazines up in the attic, and seriously, who isn't? You can donate to our online library and make those magazines accessible to everyone. Today, US Modernist Radio welcomes guest co-host Kate Wagner of McMansion Hell, along with two people working to keep modernism alive and well, brutalist documentarian Chris Grimley and the founder of IconicHouses.org, Natascha Drabbe. And now, the guy who used to think Le Corbusier was a French wine cooler, George Smart.
Yes, hi, folks. I was the first to put the booze in Corbusier. It's a special Monday here at US Modernist Radio, and I'm thrilled to have one of our former guests in the studio as co-host. Kate Wagner just graduated from Johns Hopkins. I think it's called the Johns Hopkins, right?
The Johns
They're
Hopkins.
very serious about that. The Johns Hopkins University in acoustics. But you all know and love her from her hilarious blog, McMansion Hell, where she dissects ridiculously designed giant houses and their many expensive, impractical features. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you, George.
So McMansion Hell is kind of a combination between architecture and diagramming like football plays, right?
Yep.
How does that work?
It's true. So actually, all of the images are done in a browser extension, and it's on purpose lo-fi. It's kind of part of the humor that it's so lo-fi looking. And I have like Illustrator and Photoshop, and I just never wanted to change it because the aesthetic was so funny to me. It was just this kind of ad hoc way of diagramming. But yeah, so half of the blog is, of course, these rows where I go through these ridiculous houses. And I'm just went through Texas, and they're insane and huge. And I don't know how this house came to exist. Who thought this was a good idea? Really bewildering stuff. And then the other half is our essays about architecture. Some are educational, kind of like brief, informative essays on, modernism, for example. Postmodernism is another one. And a lot of them are about sort of more oriented towards landscape studies or vernacular architecture, about common houses and how they get to be the way they are, the kind of vernacular American landscape, that kind of stuff.
And I understand you're working on a new book.
I am writing a book proposal right now. I graduated from grad school, and now I'm like book time. So I'm in talks with my agent in New York, and I'm gonna try and put a proposal together by the end of this month.
Is it going to be about this McMansion Hell theme?
It's going to be about, of course, McMansions are like a central, but it's going to take elements of McMansions, certain architectural features, certain kind of popular culture, references things like cribs, HGTV, house hunters, that kind of stuff, but really create an analysis of housing and material culture. And kind of like in the post-Reagan age, which is when McMansions started to come on the scene. And really how we can use McMansions to understand more about American life and American culture and like changes in economics and society and in architecture too as well. I mean, there's always, wherever there's common architecture, there's big architecture, and there's always a dialogue between the two of them.
Well, Kate, I'm so glad you're here, and you're going to be here for 2 shows.
Yep.
Next time, we'll talk about your well-publicized skirmish with Zillow, the real estate site.
Can't wait.
Oh, good times. Support for US Modernist Radio comes from realtor Angela Roll. In a world we made up, modernist realtor Angela Roll was kayaking down the Amazon in Brazil, 20 miles east of Manaus, in 1998. Just the week before, she had dinner with architect Oscar Niemeyer, who found her completely encantador as she poured crystal and admired his plans for the yet unbuilt Niemeyer Museum. Suddenly on the Amazon, a helicopter appeared. It was Eric Lloyd Wright, grandson of Frank, who had been chasing her for months to help him finish the design of his Malibu compound. As they flew to Manaus with the kayak hanging below the chopper, she sketched out a plan and said, "Next time, Eric, text me." Back in the U.S. today, Angela uses her architectural training and quick thinking to specialize in modernist houses, advising buyers and sellers on everything from appropriate renovation to finding the best champagne. Angela Roll is your special agent. Reach her at angelaroll.com. That's ROEHL or 919-995-0550.
Very well done.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
All right, let's get some guests on. Chris Grimley is a partner at the firm Over Under, designing not just buildings, but full experiences in architecture, graphic design, and interior design. His book, Heroic, Concrete Architecture and the New Boston, has been awarded honors by Docomomo and the Boston Preservation Alliance. In addition, he curates the Pink Comma Gallery, is a co-founder of Design Biennial Boston, and recently released, I love this title, The Boston Brutalist Map, published by Blue Crow Media. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Thanks for coming to the show.
I just want to say, Chris, I just finished your book, actually. I got a copy because I went to Monticelli Press, and they had one, and they gave it to me, and it's a great book. That's all I have to say.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it was definitely a process making that book. It was about a 10-year effort, all told, from start of project to publishing.
Our next guest is Natascha Drabbe. She is an architectural historian and founder of the Iconic Houses Network, connecting important 20th century houses from Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water to Mies van der Rohe's Villa Tugendhat. She also runs Cultural Connections, a public relations agency for architecture and design based in Amsterdam. Welcome, Natascha.
Hi, George. Thanks for having me.
So, Chris, when I hear the word brutalism, I think of either Popeye's nemesis Brutus or some kind of Fight Club situation. What is brutalism exactly, and how did it develop?
Well, I think, you want the long story or the short story?
Well, we only have so much time, Chris. I mean...
Okay, so I think, brutalism as a term is, we obviously changed it to heroic with the book and with the project that we've been working on, but the short history is that brutalism shows up in an article by the British architectural historian and critic Rayner Banham called The New Brutalism, which references Allison and Peter Smithson's Hunstanton School that they had just finished, which, strangely enough, is not made out of concrete at all, but rather CMU blocks, a lot of glass and steel, very Miesian in its composition, but really exposed a lot of the services of the building to the occupants of the building. And it was this rawness, this kind of edginess that Banham saw relating back to some of the brute stuff that Corbusier had been doing. And so it got transitioned to the Smithsons' work. And I think as the Smithsons moved more into cast-in-place and precast concrete work, the tag started being applied to pretty much any concrete building that went up during a certain time period, let's say from the late 50s to the mid 70s. And for us, it's really it's a misnomer. It really doesn't get at the complexities and the sort of sculptural qualities of the work. It kind of predetermines an attitude of disdain before really engaging with the buildings themselves.
So, as a point of reference for people who don't really know what these kind of buildings are, what are some common buildings that fall in this category people might know?
I mean, Boston City Hall is our iconic work of concrete. I think if you look at the architecture of Paul Rudolph and the arts and architecture building at Yale, a lot of the work of Marcel Breuer could fall into this work. We've done a lot of work surrounding Harry Cobb and I.M. Pei. And so, the early concrete work of Pei, particularly in Philadelphia, New York, and Boston, are kind of exemplars of it.
And the buildings in your book, they're all commercial structures, right?
No, they're not. I mean, I think one of the remarkable things that we saw when really looking at this body of work was that a lot of them were institutional or civic.
That's what I meant. They weren't houses.
We have one house.
Okay.
We have one house. Yeah, but there's very few sort of straight up corporate buildings in the book.
Natascha, you were involved working to preserve important houses around the world. Your website, iconichouses.org, is a wonderful place to visit. It captures not only the member institutions that are part of your network, but also a lot of other very helpful information. How did you get that started?
Well, first of all, I wanted to say that both Kate and Chris are interesting because the McMansions are such a big threat for the heritage that we try to preserve, the young 20th century residential masterpieces. And the Brutalist architecture is interesting because the Brutalist period is in the second half of the 20th century, and now some of these houses are also left by the first clients and become available for other purposes. And we have a Brutalist house in our what I call collection. It's a Belgian house by Julian Lampens, and it's very conceptual, but also very, very interesting, and I find it beautiful. But that was just a first response to both other guests. It's very interesting to get to know them now. I know the website of Kate, and Brutalist is at the moment a hot topic. But your question, how did I came to set up the Iconic Houses Network? That was born out of a very personal motivation. I was married to an architect who designed his own house, and we lived together 7 years in that house, and unfortunately he passed away in 1999. And I, as you already mentioned, I'm trained as an architectural historian, and I'm active in PR and curator of exhibitions. And so actually after 6 years working for the Dutch Design Foundation, I thought I need to do something to keep the ideas of my late husband, architect, alive. And the house was quite special because I was used to it after all those years, but everybody who ever entered the house was completely flabbergasted about it. And it has had some interesting innovations. So I thought, how can I share this story with people, with professionals or architects or students in training? And I looked around me how I could open up the house without making a museum of it. And then it appeared that there was not yet a network of 20th century house museums. And although I'm a private house, my house is a private house, but still when there's a group of people entering your house, you have the same issues as a regular museum with safety, with people who want to use your bathroom, and you don't have separate bathrooms, all kind of issues. Your PR, how do you make people coming back? How do you program the house with music, with lectures? So I did some research for a couple of years in the afternoon, in the evening hours, and then I asked 100 people that I collected in my database, the directors of the most obvious house museums that I could detect worldwide, if they were interested in connecting with each other in a network and meeting each other at conferences and being visible together on one website. And then from these 100 people, 30 people responded, and they were positive. And the quality of the people who responded, like the directors of Falling Water and the Schindler House and the Alfa Aalto Foundation, I thought, okay, if these directors think this is a good idea, that means that I just consider this as a go. And with a little seed money of the Alfa Aalto Foundation, we could make the ideas visible in a website, I mean.
Well, now, for your own house, how often do people get to see it? If it's not open as a museum, do you have like a regular day each month, or how does it work for the public to visit your place?
Well, people can, once a month, the first Sunday of every month, they can make an appointment for a tour. But sometimes people ask me if they can come, if they come from Australia and they have a small group of themselves and they want to be on a Wednesday, and I just try to make it possible for them, because I know I can't ask them to come back the first Sunday of the next month. So it is actually by appointment, but all the Dutch people I try to gather on that first Sunday of the month.
Well, we will be back in Amsterdam in May of 2020, so please pencil us in for a visit.
Yeah, I know, by the way, the dates of our new conference, but that's also in May.
Okay.
So, yeah, we should talk about that a little bit further. Yeah.
Chris, in your book, what are some of the architects that you covered, their work in producing these buildings?
Well, a whole wide range, actually. I mean, Boston at that point was really at the kind of forefront of architects working in this material, and so you get the I.M. Pays, certainly world class. You get the Marcel Breuers, who are really sort of exploring the limits of precast concrete. You get Eduardo Catalano, who's chair at MIT, really doing very kind of, complex mathematical tests on just how thin you can push concrete. And then in addition, you get people like Jose Luis Sert, who is the chair at Harvard, really pushing ideas about how to bring cities back together again through various campus buildings at Harvard and Boston University. And then at the same time, you have people like Tad Stoll, who unfortunately passed away before the book came out, who did some remarkable small and large projects throughout the city. And then, I wouldn't be amiss to mention Mariota Stevens' house, which was sort of a test case on how to live in concrete just outside of the city of Boston. The entire house was poured in place, and there was not a sort of single door. The house was very sort of conceptually clear in the idea that it didn't need any doors for privacy or any kind of divisions between her children and her own living experiences. So it really runs a gamut from widely recognizable to young upstarts. And I think the youngest upstart is obviously Michael McKinnell, who at the sort of tender age of 27 won the competition with Gerhard McKinnell to design Boston City Hall.
Does the public like brutalist buildings?
I think, we've seen, part of the project is the rescue effort. And a lot of what we've been doing over the last 10 years has been trying to make the conversations about these buildings more nuanced, to really have people talk about why these buildings happened and the reasons why these particular set in Boston happened. And as we've gone on, I think we've really seen a sea change of sorts, where if you ask people, when we do lectures and we ask people to raise hands at the beginning about how much they hate them, and then go through a book talk and question and answer, and then ask people how many people we've changed minds, we get a significant amount of that.
Now, Natascha, these members that you have in iconic houses, they're all doing pretty well, right? Are any of them any kind of danger of going away?
Well, the members that you see on the website, they are pretty much okay because they are organizations and run by professionals. But there is a lot more going on that we are concerned of and that we want to help. And that is actually a sort of a new direction we are going in. We did that already in the background by connecting people, reaching out to private owners of houses, helping them, consulting them what they can do, what kind of grants there could be, how they could learn from each other, from other owners of houses of that architect about maintenance and restoration issues. So we want to do more about that. It is a new project that we're working on because there's a lot of young heritage, like what I said already, the original clients of many interesting houses that were designed in the 20th century. The original clients have passed away, and then their children, their heirs, they live sometimes, they're scattered all over the world, and they cannot take care of their ancestor homes. So they either sell the house, and then most of the times the value of the property of the soil of the site is higher than the value of the house, and so it's demolished, and there's maybe a new McMansion. So a lot of houses are at risk, and what we want to do is make an inventory of those houses worldwide and come up with best practices in order to show people who have such a house and are looking for solutions, to show them what they can do. But the difficulty is that in all countries all over the world, there's different legislation, there's different ways to protect these houses, but we want to set up a project with many partners worldwide, and we're now just at the start of it, and then have an online resource where with a very low threshold and where people can find all kind of information that can help them.
Now, you mentioned Falling Water earlier, which is Frank Lloyd Wright's masterpiece in Mill Run, Pennsylvania, in America. Is that the most well-attended house museum, or is there any one that's more popular than that?
Well, I think in the United States that'll be the one with the most, because every 7 minutes, I think a group of 13 people enters the house.
Wow.
That's so much.
So that is a real machine. And the interesting thing is that you don't experience that while you are in that house. So because there are several groups at the same time that the house allows doing so. But not all houses have that possibility, of course. But for the United States, this is absolutely the most important and most well-known house. I think for Europe, everybody who thinks about modernism will see the Villa Savoye.
Yes.
And so Le Corbusier is absolutely the hero here, but Frank Lloyd Wright for North America.
I went to the Villa Savoye a couple years ago.
How was it?
I liked it a lot, actually. I was with a friend who was studying architecture in France. He's French. And he said that he had never seen it either. And so we went together, and he said that everyone thought it was disappointing, but I didn't find it disappointing at all. But I was shocked that it was much smaller than they make it look in pictures, actually. It's not actually a really big house. It's very compact and small.
Like Graceland.
And
Yes, exactly, Tom, like Graceland.
Yeah, I remember really enjoying it. The only thing that was kind of a bummer is that they took all the furniture out. They were restoring the furniture at the time. So the house was empty. But it was cool to see all of the little French school children going. We never got to go to a modern house museum when I was in school.
No, that's not on the curriculum here in North Carolina or many places. Now, here's a toss-up question for both of you. Is there any correlation between people disliking modernist buildings or houses and having never stepped in one?
That's an interesting question. I think for us, a lot of the concrete buildings are, institutional and civic buildings, and so a lot of people have gone through them. And I think, the bigger issue with civic structures, especially, is, either deferred or lack of maintenance that happens to them, in addition to, especially in Boston, active campaigns by former mayors to continually bemoan that the building is terrible.
Now, who would do that? What mayor do we have to write?
He's no longer with us.
Okay. Did he die?
So he did pass away just after he left office.
Oh,
He was in office for about 20 years. But, he was a good mayor. He just hated the building.
Was this the Paul Rudolph building?
No, this is the Calvin McKinnell City Hall building.
Oh, that's the building.
But, I think a lot of the problems arise from, misunderstanding about their importance, one, but critically, lack of funds to really keep them in good condition and working well.
It's really interesting with these institutional stories how they never have enough money to maintain the building, but they always have enough money to replace it later on.
Oh, man.
Well, I think, the funny thing, Michael McKinnell, the architect of City Hall, has said on many occasions that it would take a small nuclear device to get rid of Boston City Hall. So it really isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
We did just did an exhibition about a month and a half ago called Brutal Destruction, where kind of perversely collected images of concrete buildings being taken away or altered in such a way that they're unrecognizable. And that includes, nitrous cyclorama at Gettysburg. It includes Paul Rudolph's Orange County building.
In Goshen.
That's my story. Yeah.
In Goshen, which was restored really horribly.
Oh, my God.
It includes Prentice Women's Hospital by Bertrand Goldberg in Chicago.
Yeah,
the list goes on, and these structures are disappearing quite rapidly from our landscape and from our memory.
I started writing about architecture when I was in high school because of the Orange County Government Center, because my mother was from Goshen, and we got a big fight about it. She was like, you couldn't go to the DMV in that place. It always smelled like mold. It was ugly. It was terrible. And it was like, I was donating all my babysitting money to Docomomo to save the building. So I was so upset. I started writing all these letters and essays and stuff, and that's how I started writing about architecture. But back then, this was in, I think, 2010, 2011, just about. Back then, brutalism was still the no-no thing. And now it seems like there's been lots of picture books like This Brutal World, like just really kind of coffee table books with not much substance. Just like pictures of brutalist architecture became really popular relatively recently.
Oh yeah, they just published a brutalist coloring book for adults.
I'm like,
love
that's so funny. I was like, but yeah, I mean, there was lots of losses in the early 2010s. earlier too, like the Get Carter car park in London or in England, that was really depressing.
And we just lost Robin Hood.
Yeah, and then they salvaged it. It was so macabre. They salvaged that little part of it. It's like taking someone's spleen out and putting it in a case.
Right.
I hate it when they do that.
I was so upset about that. I was like, this is so irreverent. This is someone's house, and you're just like, someone's home, you know? Not just an incredible building, but, you know, people's homes. And you're just like, it was great, but not worth saving. You know,
it's very interesting because, you know, now you have the debate surrounding Glasgow School of Art, right? And whether or not, for those not in the know, the Charles Rennie Mackintosh building in Glasgow, where my parents and my family is from, and I've been in that building, and it was a remarkable structure. And so now, with the terrible devastation of 2 fires, the question or the conversation becomes: do you rebuild it, right? And if you rebuild it, will it be as good as the original? And I think there's plenty of examples of buildings that have been replicated according to the architectural team's original drawings that are quite successful. And so, you know, there are ways in which you can maintain a building and create a museum out of it, but there are other ways in which you can sort of take buildings that were civic structures and try and reinvent them.
Mm-hmm.
Natascha, tell us about some of the other houses that are maybe not so famous that are members of your organization.
Yes, because all the big names are there. But for instance, if you would go to Poland, there is a house designed by Oskar Hansen, and Oskar Hansen was an architect who did not build a huge oeuvre, but his own house was actually an example of he was a teacher, also professor, and his theory was completely used in his own house. So students could come to his country house, and it was totally explanatory of his vision of architecture. I just mentioned Julian Lampens, the Belgian architect, also not a hugely famous name, but he has a very, very interesting oeuvre, and one of his brutalist houses can be also not only visited, but you can also rent it for a holiday or for a retreat or for meetings. Hans Scharoun, he designed a house in Leuwau, and that is it looks like an ocean.
What country is that in?
Leuwau is Germany, but it's on the border of Czech Republic, Germany, and Poland. So it's difficult to reach. A lot of these houses are difficult to reach. You cannot just take a train because they are on very remote places. And I have a collection now of routes that people emailed me when I came to visit them, and it's very funny because it's always dirt roads and they're very bumpy, and then there's because of lots of rainfall, you have to watch out with your car, and so these places are most of the times you need to rent a car and make a nice road trip to reach them. But this house Schminke is really interesting house where you can also stay overnight. So some of these houses, also some of the Frank Lloyd Wright houses, you can stay for 24 hours, and that's of course the best way to experience architecture, because then you have much more time to hear all the sounds and to see the change of light over the course of the day, and you can really zoom into the details, because when you have a tour in the house, you are there for 1.5 hours maybe, and then you leave the house again. But if you stay there for a longer time and you sit down on a sofa, and that is really something.
Now, is the couple that runs Polymath Park, are they involved with you?
No, not yet. No,
Not yet.
We are in touch, but they are not yet a member. No.
For those of you that are not familiar with Polymath Park, it is near Fallingwater and Kentuck Knop in Pennsylvania. And it's this couple who are basically serial modernists. They started collecting houses by Frank Lloyd Wright that were going to be bulldozed or disposed of, and have moved 1 or 2 to this site, plus some houses by other students of Frank Lloyd Wright. I think there are 4 or 5 houses there, and a restaurant. You can eat there. You can spend the night in one of these houses, the Duncan House. It's really quite a fabulous facility. They've made great members for iconic houses.
I actually have a question, Natascha. Well, I have 2 questions. The first is, recently I saw that the Ennis House went up for sale in California. And so when a big modernist icon like that goes for sale, is your organization involved? Like, what do you do? Are you in contact with realtors, or because I'm sure like something like the Ennis house is like a huge deal, you know?
Yeah, we want to bring the right people to get the realtors together with the potential buyers. So what we do on our website, you only see the member houses that are the real house museums or the houses that you can visit. But on Facebook, we share a lot of other information. So, for instance, also the Smith house of Richard Meyer is for sale right now, not yet registered on the list of historic landmarks. So what we do is we share that information on our Facebook and then hope that the right people find it. And in the future, we will also have those houses on our website.
Natascha, last June you spoke in Torino, which we know as Turin, at the Momo Symposium, which stands for Modern Movement Women. That sounds, yeah. I mean, that sounds amazing. So what was that like?
That was amazing. I know how hard it is to find speakers, to find female speakers, because I just organized a conference myself. And they had a lineup of 180 speakers. Actually, everybody who joined the conference was a speaker, all women. And so that was interesting and important also, because there are a lot of women involved in, it was about creativity since the modern movement. So there was a lot of interesting stories about the role of women involved. But then I also had to give a lecture. And when you look at the 150 houses that are on our website, there were 4 designed by women. 2 architects' houses, one by Eileen Gray and one by Lina Bobardi, and 2 artist homes and studios, one of Dora Gordine at the Dorridge House in London and one of Georgia O'Keeffe in New Mexico. So that is not a high score out of 150. So I had to think of other ways to tell about women in the iconic houses field, and then I came on the role of the architect's wives like Isa Gropius and Dion Neutra, and also the women as clients like Aline Bornsdal of the Hollyhock House and Edith Farnsworth of the Farnsworth House. But it was quite interesting. I met finally the president of Docomomo, and Docomomo is an interesting, important, also from Dutch origin network, and they
Theodore Prudhomme
worldwide. The founder, he was from Docomomo America, and he is Dutch.
Yes.
And the founders were Hubert-Jan Henket and Wessel de Jonge, and that was already 30 years ago. So they have a really well spread out network with national chapters all over the world. But they are dedicated to all building types. And we are only dedicated to residential architecture, and our website is much more for a general public also to check it when you go for a trip or for another journey, that you first check our website to see which houses you can visit. And Docomomo is much more in general, all building sites, and try to preserve it. But I was really happy that I met with Anna Tostoes, the current president of Docomomo International, and also the founder of Open House Network, which is also an important organization worldwide that organizes open houses every year. They have a weekend and people can visit all kind of new architecture. So that was an eye-opener. So in the future, in our communication, we will also be much more focused more on the role that women had. As soon as I detect them, I will promote them.
Well, that's cool. Hey, Chris, I wanted to ask you, with these buildings that are owned by government, for instance, I noticed that it's rare to find any governmental-owned brutalist building that people like at all. I mean, there's always people who work in there complain about it. We have this in our local area, too.
Probably because no one likes the DMV.
Maybe that's it. We have a local police station, and it was originally an insurance company, and it was gorgeous. And then it got sold and became a police station. The police have hated it for 25 years. And it contributes to the community not really getting the building because it's being used for a purpose other than what it was designed for. Do you see that in some of the other buildings you've documented?
I mean, I think so, and I think it goes back to conversation about, communication and ensuring that the kind of knee-jerk reactions that happen towards these buildings are avoided by just like nuanced ideas about how to talk about them. And so, not every concrete building is great. I'm not familiar with that particular one. I'm sure it's delightful. And we had, like, for instance, in Boston, there were in our catalog, over 150, just shy of 200 buildings that we found between the years of 1960 to 1976. So in a 16-year period, there was a lot of buildings put up. Not all of them are great, right? And so
no, they're not.
Not having the ones that are terrible affect the ones that are in need of explanation and care, I think, is part of the project. That's not really answering your question. I think, again, it goes back to that issue of what people expect with beauty and how ideas of beauty and aesthetics change over time.
Let me put it a different way. Are there any government buildings that people just adore and love working there?
Besides the Smithsonian?
I mean, we're currently working on a conservation plan for Boston City Hall, and I think you would get more than 50% of people who work there actually enjoy the space.
Okay.
I think that building in particular is the unique one in that the civic functions of the day-to-day government are elevated to the top of the building and in a circle of, or a ring of offices that have daylight on both sides. And what part of the conservation plan is to do is to figure out how to get light deeper into the spaces and how to more adequately ventilate, given that no one looked at the windows for almost 50 years. I think, again, it goes back to this idea that just because you have been told that something is ugly, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will always be ugly. And we're doing our best to sort of shift conversations around that.
No building is really ugly.
Except McMansion.
It's like they said back in Seinfeld, that's a remarkable baby.
I think about this a lot, actually, because, my job is making fun of these terrible houses that nobody likes. But if you look at why nobody likes them, aesthetics, people build them. They spend lots of money building them, and, they don't sell that well because they're a custom home for one person that was totally customized in a ridiculous way. But at the same time, people, it was a huge thing to have a McMansion. It was a cultural icon. And then when the recession came, it became a bad cultural icon. I mean, people what is ugly, what is beautiful? That becomes a really serious question. But I think with the McMansions and the difference between McMansions and brutalism, for example, which people also don't like, much to my eternal chagrin, is that with brutalism, there was a certain idealism that went into, the production of buildings, especially, Paul Rudolph, of course, who's my favorite architect. There was all this discussion about circulation, about this kind of organicism, the sculptural elements, these grand gestures, these almost living forms. I mean, there's so much ambition and some of the purposes that the buildings were used for were extremely important civic functions, things like hospitals, just trying to improve people's lives through building and doing it in a way that was architecturally ambitious. But with McMansions, it's I want to show that I have money, and this is how I do it. I have big columns and a big foyer, and nothing matches. And it's you look at those two things, it's not just an architecture, it's an ethics. And that's why, heroic is such a great term for it. And I like that you guys use it, because it is. I mean, you look at the work of the Smithsons, and it's totally heroic. All the ambition there, and all of the politics at the time.
Yeah, and I think, also heroic acknowledges every hero has an Achilles heel, right? True. So we're not rah-rah cheerleaders for everything that's happening. We're really trying to elevate the conversation. And I think maybe the issue about government buildings, particularly of that period, is, they were built in response to a lot of urban decay and a lot of things that people were leaving cities in droves for multiple reasons. In Boston, nothing had really been built of any importance in about 30 or 40 years. And so government was seen as something that would help the city and help the civic really become part of the life of the city again. And in the intervening couple of decades, people have come to see government in a much different way. And so the civic aspirations of a place like City Hall get easily flipped to, the rather knee-jerk reaction of this coming from some kind of communist dictatorship, which is really not the case. And it's
the evil Red Scare.
Yeah, and it's almost embarrassing when you hear that come out of someone's mouth, because you realize that they have not been informed about the buildings, but also it's just not true.
Yeah.
Chris and Natascha, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been great.
Yeah, my pleasure.
You can get Chris's book, Heroic, Concrete Architecture and the New Boston. Natascha's website is iconichouses.org.
Thanks for listening. US Modernist Radio is underwritten by Angela Roll, your special agent for Modernist Houses. 919-995-0550. Okay, take us out, Tom.
Thank you. Visit usmodernist.org to listen to past shows and discover our massive mid-century modernist archives. US Modernist Radio is produced at Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. That theme song of ours was performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl. Cindy Stratton, not her real name, researches guest from a secret witness protection program inside Starbucks. Oh, however, she finally consented to a photo.
Yes.
Which you can find at usmodernist.org. Wow. US Modernist Radio is a production of Triangle Modernist Archive, a nonprofit educational organization for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. George and Kate and I will be back in 2 weeks with another concrete and steel, sleek yet beautifully crafted edition of US Modernist Radio.